few weeks earlier, I had my annual review at my job and it went really well. My boss said that I was doing a fantastic job and was really happy with my work performance. I received a pretty sizable pay increase, so I decided to do something I had been wanting to do for a while now, and that was to buy my own home. I was hoping to find something closer to work since I lived pretty far away. I had also been saving for a long time, so I figured this increase was the sign to pull the trigger. I shared this with my family and friends, and they all thought it was a good idea as well. So I started looking for a place that was nice but also somewhat affordable because I looked closer to where I work and the real estate seemed to jump up in price. As I looked, I found a few places and went to see them but didn't really see anything that I liked. A few weeks had gone by and then a few months. At this point, I still couldn't find anything that I liked. A few of my friends were also helping me and keeping an eye out for anything that popped up that was affordable. They contacted some brokers and agencies on my behalf, and after a little more time had passed, I got a call from one of the real estate agents letting me know that there was a nice house that was recently put on the market. It was in a perfect area near my office and was at a really good price as well. I was pretty excited but tried to contain my joy until I saw it. He asked me if I was free the next night and if I wanted to make an appointment to see it, to which I said yes, of course. Now, I have to admit, I couldn't sleep that night and it seemed like it took forever for the next day to come. I woke up the next morning and it was a perfect warm sunny Sunday morning. I had my breakfast and did my errands and then called the agent to confirm the time again. We had decided on 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but when I called him, he said that something had come up and wanted to know if I could move the time to 8 o'clock. I thought it was kind of odd to be so late on a Sunday night, but I was pretty excited so I didn't give it much thought and said okay. He said he would see me then. So I left my apartment at 7:15 so that I would give myself plenty of time to get there and not be late. I got there 10 minutes early and it was dark out by then. I waited for a few minutes as he was not there yet. Soon 8 o'clock came and then it was 10 minutes after and he was still not there. I was looking out for him and then eventually he pulled up at 8:20. He was very odd looking. He had a dark coat on that was kind of pulled up high and a hat that kind of covered his face. As he walked up to me, he asked, "Are you here to see the house?" I thought to myself, well, yeah, I'm the only one here at 20 past 8. And then politely said, "Yes, I am. I'm Tracy. Nice to meet you." He replied and said, "I'm John Gallagher. Nice to meet you." And then he said, "Please follow me." Now, I thought to myself that we had talked over the phone a few times over the last couple of days, and his voice sounded much different in person than it did over the phone, but then didn't give it much more thought after that and followed him into the house. Once we were inside, I noticed right away it was very nice and well maintained, even though it was dimly lit. He went over the normal things like, how many rooms, how many bathrooms, the year it was built, etc., etc. And as we were talking and I was listening, I noticed a weird smell when we got to the other end of the hallway. It smelled like pesticide or something like that. I asked him what it was and he said, probably just from the cleaning crew as they do a complete cleaning in every house before putting them on the market. After a few moments he asked, "Would you like to see the basement? It's very spacious and I'm sure you'll like it." So of course I said yes, I want to see everything. As we started walking down the stairs to the basement, it was very dark. Once we got to the bottom, I was walking behind him and I asked him if he was going to turn the lights on. He said that the light switch at the top of the stairs was broken and that there was another light on the other side of the room that he would turn on once we got over there. At this point I noticed that the smell was getting really bad now. It smelled like the pesticide was being used to cover another bad smell up. I had no idea what was going on here and couldn't see 2 feet in front of me. I started to feel really uncomfortable. At this point I couldn't see him in front of me, so I called out to him and said, "Hey John, can you go turn the lights on and then we'll walk the rest of the way when I can see?" He said, "Oh no, it's fine, just follow my voice, we're almost over to the light." At this point I literally started having a hard time breathing and felt like I was going to pass out. I was so creeped out that I said, "No, I'm going back up," and very quickly found my way back over to the bottom of the stairs in the dark. All I wanted to do was get the hell out of here. Once I reached the stairs, I started to quickly climb them and suddenly 2 hands reached out through the stairs and barely grabbed the bottom of my legs. I was so scared that I screamed at the top of my lungs and kicked them away. As I started running up the stairs, I felt someone try to grab me from behind, but they missed. I was moving really fast. Once I reached the top of the stairs, I could hear multiple footsteps behind me chasing me. I ran down the hallway and out the front door. I ran straight to my car, started up, and sped away. As I was leaving, I saw multiple men inside the front door looking out. I called the police on my cell phone and reported what happened in detail. The next day I called the real estate agency, and when I asked if I could speak with John Gallagher, the receptionist paused and said in a confused voice, "I'm sorry, miss, we don't have a John Gallagher that works here. Are you sure you have the correct agency?" And I said, "Yes, this is the Williams Real Estate Agency, correct?" And she said, "Yes, it is, but again, there's no John Gallagher that works here." I tried to call the cell number I had for him, and it has since been disconnected. To this day, it still really gives me the chills when I think about how close I came to being kidnapped or worse. A few months back, we moved to a little town in West Virginia. The house had a nice big yard and a garden and was set back into the woods away from the street. We loved the place, and it was perfect for my younger brother and sister because they could play and run around wherever they wanted to. And because it was away from the street, it was safe. Not that there was a lot of traffic, but still, there was peace of mind. The house was a bit old-fashioned, and it needed some minor repairs, but was well within our budget, and we considered it to be a fixer-upper when we bought it, so there were no surprises. Also, the repairs could be done as we went. There wasn't anything urgent that needed to be fixed right away. The bulk of it was mostly painting, repairing some walls, replacing some steps, and some floor repair. The house was definitely on the older side, but still in really good shape. I think the biggest part of it all was going to be cleaning out the basement. After doing some work upstairs, about a month had passed and we decided to start working on it and cleaning it out. We had initially looked down there when we bought the house, but never walked through because it was so packed full of junk. When we bought the house, it was owned by a little old lady who had passed away. She didn't have any family, so there was no one to clean it out. Because of this, we had gotten a little bit knocked off the price, so it was agreed upon ahead of time that we would clean it out. It looked like it may have been used just for storage because, like I said, it was packed. There was everything from old tables and chairs to dusty boxes, an old washing machine, and some really old paintings. To tell you the truth, it was actually pretty creepy. The odd thing about it too is whenever I was down there, it always felt like I was being watched. There was only one small window in the whole basement, and it was one of those ones that was at the top of the wall, and you could see the daylight come in from the outside. I could see something that was covered on the other side of the basement from the way the light was shining in on it. It looked like it might be some kind of a table or something. Even the one light that was down there was old and dim, so it didn't do too much to help. After a while of digging through some things, I noticed what the light was shining in on. It was a small piano that was over in the corner. It was covered in cobwebs and very old. I guess I didn't see it initially because of all the junk that was piled up in front of it. I made my way over to it after moving a bunch of stuff. It had a large red dusty blanket covering it that looked like it was from back in the 1800s. Again, it was very creepy, but at the same time I couldn't help but to be really intrigued by it. I removed the blanket, and the piano was in surprisingly good condition based on its age. The keys all still worked as well too. I figured it might be worth looking into selling it. Now, at this point, I was really tired from working in the basement all day, so I went upstairs and had some dinner and decided to go to bed early. As soon as my head hit the pillow, I was out like a light. Later that night at about 2:30 in the morning, I woke up and I don't know why, but I heard music playing. It was very faint and creepy sounding, and I had no idea where it was coming from. It couldn't be from a neighbor's house because my nearest neighbor lived more than 8 miles away. I got up and walked down the hallway and checked the living room to make sure one of the kids didn't leave the television on and found that it was off. Now, by this time the music started to get a little bit louder, and as I walked by the basement door, I realized it was piano music and it was coming from the basement. Now, at this point, I could feel my heart starting to race because I knew that no one in this house played the piano and especially wouldn't be down there at 2:30 in the morning. I paused for a minute trying to decide if I really wanted to go down there to check. At that very minute, the music stopped. I ended up putting my fear aside and turned on the light switch and slowly went down the stairs and over to the piano. The only thing I noticed was the red blanket was now back over the piano, which kind of freaked me out, but I figured one of the kids must have recovered it or something. I used that logic and went back upstairs, and even though I was still wondering if I was hearing things or not, I went back to bed. The next day all I did was think about that weird encounter, but then soon forgot about it as I went about my daily chores. Later that night, again at 2:30 in the morning, lo and behold, I was once again awoken by faint, creepy piano music. I got up and walked down the hallway, and as I walked up to the basement door, it was obvious that it was coming from down there again. This time I couldn't put it off. I had to check it, so I slowly opened the door and flipped the light switch on, but the light didn't go on, go figure. There was someone clearly down there playing the piano, and the music was very ominous. I didn't want them to see or hear me, so I slowly and quietly went down about 3 steps and then bent down as low as I could, and I saw it. As God is my witness, and I kid you not, there was some kind of a ghostly figure of a man sitting at the piano looking down at the keys as he played. I could tell because even though the light wasn't on, there was some light coming in through the window reflecting off of him from the brightly lit moon outside. My heart was racing at the thought of this being a ghost. I was frozen with fear and wanted to scream but couldn't move. After about 20 seconds of watching him, he suddenly stopped playing and slowly looked up at me from across the basement. He had the eeriest, creepiest look on his face. It was an evil grin and his eyes were wide open and he was just staring at me. The fear just ran through me, and right at that moment I turned and ran back up the stairs and slammed the door and locked it. I still to this day have been trying to figure out what to do. I haven't unlocked that door since that night and can still hear the eerie music playing at 2:30 in the morning. This happened when I was almost 10 years old. My birthday was coming up in 4 days and I was so excited. My mom and dad said because I was turning 10, I could ask for whatever I wanted within reason and they would get it for me for my birthday present. After some long thought, I decided that I wanted a dog. I had always wanted one and they figured I was getting to the age that I could care for it, but they still had the responsibility talk with me just the same. After reassuring them that I would totally take 100% care of it, my birthday came and my dad came home one night after work with a beautiful little puppy for me. I was off the wall ecstatic. I ended up naming him Charlie, and he was the sweetest dog I'd ever seen, and he had a great temperament. My room was in the basement, but since Charlie was so young, he stayed in his pen up in the living room for the first few months. Eventually, when he got a little older, we decided he could stay down in the basement with me in my room. Now, the oddest thing was when I brought him downstairs for the first time, there was a section of my room where he would just stare at and bark endlessly. I had never seen or heard him growl at anything before, so I was really surprised at what he could be so interested in. I would walk over to the section of the wall that he always seemed to bark at, and he would stop barking uncontrollably. I told my parents about it, and my dad came down to investigate, but found nothing. This continued to go on for over a month and was starting to get a little old. I told my dad again about it, and he came down to my room to take another look. At one point, he knocked on a section of the wall where the dog had been barking at and discovered that it sounded like there was a hollow section behind the sheetrock, which was very odd. After thinking about it for a minute, he went and grabbed a hammer and started breaking a small hole in the wall, and the whole time Charlie was barking his head off. I had to put him back in his crate upstairs to calm him down. After I made sure he was secure, I came back downstairs only to find my dad standing there with a look of horror on his face. I asked him what was wrong, and he just stood there frozen. I asked him again as I walked over to him, and he just pointed through the hole in the wall. When I looked through, I saw a crawl space and what looked like the skeleton of an adult human that had been buried behind that wall for years. We were both in shock and frozen. We eventually called the police, and they came and took pictures and then removed the bones. My dad asked them what happens next, and they said they would have to do an investigation on how old the bones were and on all of the prior owners of the house to find out when and how the body ended up there. I think this is the scaredest I've ever been at my ripe old age of 10 years old, and all I kept thinking about is all those nights I slept down there alone.